There we go.
Yes.
All right, Tim,
Great.
tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for doing this. It's quite exciting for me, especially seeing you so big on the screen. Normally, you're just this tiny window.
It's true.
Yeah, so my name is Tim. I'm 26 years old. I'm married. I live in Germany. I'm a student of philosophy and English literature. Currently doing my master's degree in Heidelberg. And yes, I thought you might enjoy that, seeing that you sometimes mention the Heidelberg Catechism.
Catechism, that's right. Never been there, but the word I've said many times.
Yes. And yeah, so I grew up in a Christian family. And I wrote you, it was in a YWAM context. I think you're aware of the organization.
Yep.
And it was a very positive experience for me. Over the years, speaking to other so-called, I don't know, missionary kids or something like that, I feel there's sometimes people have difficult experiences. But for me, it was a very positive one, and one that influenced my faith and my standing in life.
What did your parents do? How long were your parents in YWAM? Career?
So yes, so full time.
Okay.
So, and I think now it's probably close to 30 years. So my mom is still in YWAM. My dad left a couple of years ago. It was just the base situation here changed a bit, and then he does video editing work now. Yeah, so but I always went to public school. I think that's also quite a normal thing in Germany. We don't really, I think homeschooling is illegal even.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I think we had like one family in not associated with YWAM, but in my village, and they just did homeschooling, and it I think like someday the police like showed up to pick up the kids. You know, it's a important thing here to do.
Wow.
Public school. Yeah. One thing I haven't mentioned, I grew up bilingual, so speaking English and German. My dad's from New Zealand. Came here to Germany to do YWAM and missions work. My mom was born in Africa, in Angola, and came to Germany when she was in her teens. And so my parents met in this small village. It's like 10,000 people live here. And that's where they met. That's where they fell in love. And that's where I was born and raised, essentially.
Wow. Wow. You are a world citizen.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And yeah, privilege, I think as well, to have the two passports as well. So I can always pick and choose wherever I go, which one is more useful.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think like trying to describe also my faith, and also I guess the way that I was in school. I think I would probably like describe myself as a late bloomer in a sense. So okay. I didn't really enjoy school that much. It was always like so many things, so many different people demanding so many different things of me, and I was more had my own interests, did a lot of music and that kind of stuff. And it was after school, when I was 18 years old, I had a period of 3 years where I worked in like various factories. I also did a DTS, which is like a discipleship training school with YWAM in Scotland. And then after 3 years, I started studying, and to me, like these 3 years where I didn't have any intellectual stimulation, or not as much, really helped me, because then there was like a organic hunger that started to evolve, and that which completely changed my approach to school and to learning as well, because it was me who actually wanted to learn, compared to back in school when I had the feeling it was like laid on me somehow. And I had a great experience at university, so it was something that quite surprised me as well. Initially, I wanted to do, I started with theology and English. I originally wanted to do mathematics, but I couldn't because it only started at a certain point in the year, but I wanted to start anyway. And then it was in the first literature class, because I thought, well, I might as well do English for one semester at least. But then I sat in the first English Introduction to Literary Studies, and somehow it was just the first session, and the teacher had put up a poem by William Carlos Williams, and just like read it out, and like something somehow like clicked for me, and it was like so, I don't know, moving, or I felt there was like something there, and it was like almost an immediate decision to say, this is what I want to do. So.
Do you know where William Carlos Williams is from?
Is it Paterson, New Jersey?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, go on. Keep going. You're doing great.
Yeah. And it was in an English class. It was called. It's one subject that's mandatory is called oral communications, and the lecturer was quite enamored with at least the style of Christopher Hitchens, and so that started me off my intellectual YouTube journey of like discovering the new atheists, and so I spent quite a lot of time listening to them. And generally about my personality, I'm I'm very high in openness, but I'm very low in conscientiousness. So I did the Jordan Peterson understand myself thing. I'm like the 0th percentile in conscientiousness.
Oh boy.
But I'm also very low in neuroticism, so I don't care as much about it, I guess.
It's a good thing you're married. That might keep you alive.
You know, that's very true, because my wife, she's like the 99th percentile in conscientiousness. So it's like, I think life-saving, or it's definitely very helpful. And it's a very, like, my marriage, I think, is probably one of the most rewarding projects I'm participating in, you know. And
how long have you been married?
For 4 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were quite young. I was 22, she was 20, turned 21 a few months after. Yeah, that's definitely one way. When people at university found out that I'm married, it's like probably like the second question is like, are you a Christian? So yeah.
Really?
Yes, it's like, isn't that a thing in America? I feel like in Germany, at least, it's like a cultural thing as well.
Yes.
Where it's like, if you're married young, it's like, why are you doing this? It's like, you're a Christian. So
yeah. I've never put that together, but you're exactly right.
Yeah. So so that this personality thing, I think it's kind of funny in a way, but it's also very serious for me, because it really, my marriage and my relationship with my wife, her name is Julia, I feel like we can really benefit from one another, you know.
Is she a German national?
Yes.
Okay, so you met her in Germany.
Met her in Germany, went to the same school, sang in the same choir. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah. Exactly. I'm just trying to figure out where I left off just now.
Well, married young, you were a Christian.
Yeah.
Then you said Julia, and you were, yeah, I don't know where you were going. Sorry to derail you.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I think I was just talking also about university and
Yeah.
finding I think that finding the new atheist. That's where I left off. And I just wanted to mention that I'm very like high in openness as well, and like open to new ideas. And so I never felt, I don't know, threatened, or it's not difficult for me to listen to people that I disagree with. I actually quite enjoy doing that, and which is, I think, great, especially at university and also just in the YouTube world. And then I think it was like through that I found Jordan Peterson then in probably 2017. I think like the first video was like a clickbait title, why you are a Nazi, or like something like that. Like, what is that? Clicked on it, and so that started like a whole new thing for me. Because what I find interesting is that a lot of people that I hear on your channel and also just on the web is people having maybe like deconstruction experiences at university, and then through Peterson finding a way back again to the church, even though it's more like the Orthodox or maybe the Catholic, more the with the focus on like the sacramental, the symbolic aspects of Christianity. And for me, I also came in contact with a lot of like postmodern deconstruction theory and all that kind of stuff at university, and I always enjoyed it. But it because in a way, I'm trying to put it right. It's not that I didn't take it seriously, but that it's like, in a way, it didn't really affect me deep down. Like, I didn't take it seriously as a way of life and a way of like truly thinking about things. I was more trying to integrate maybe things like how, like what can I learn from these theories and apply it to my Christian faith. So it was more like that. I never felt like a complete, I don't know, deconstruction and like losing of
you
my
already had a
frame of
solid worldview down there, and so it's something that you could, I mean, you could engage it, you could deal with it. It was there, it wasn't threatening, you could handle it, but it didn't colonize you. Would that be a way to say it?
Yes, probably, but I would still say that it like took up some territory in my inner world, and it definitely changed my way of thinking about Christianity as well. So it's not that I just like remain unchanged or something, because to me it often feels like it's like a shaking of my, I don't know, tree of faith or something, and I accept that, because to me it's a rewarding experience, and I want the, in Petersonian language, the deadwood to burn down. I want a faith that is strong and that can withhold serious considerations of people who have other perspectives, which is one thing I love about your channel as well, and your discussions with Vervaeke especially.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with you on that value, because hot house, in at least here in the States, we call them hot house tomatoes. They're available in the supermarket all year, but they're not like what you grow in your backyard and pluck from the vine. They're weak. They're weak because they haven't actually engaged. They haven't actually engaged the world. So no, I agree with you completely.
Yeah, I think that's a good thought. Actually, it's quite funny because like my DTS, it's the discipleship training school with YWAM that I did.
Right.
It was a very positive experience for me as well. And the picture that was often used, I'm not sure if it was me, if it, I don't know where it came from, but it's like this idea that this school is like a greenhouse essentially.
Yeah.
You know, you are essentially totally shielded from any other worldviews, and you're very like focusing in on you and like your relationship with God, and I found it very, very helpful. Like it was a great experience. Although now I probably like re-evaluating things, I still look at it differently, but the fundamental impact it had for me and with my relationship with God, it definitely something that has stayed with me. So Peterson didn't like bring me back to Christianity. Instead, it was almost like a counter movement for me, because listening to his biblical series and the psychological significance, it changed, like to me it almost offered like an alternative way of looking at the Bible and looking at faith, and which did stand in contrast, at least in a few ways, to the way I understood and conceptualized Christianity and belief. And I know in his introduction, you know, he says, and I believe that, and I understand him that way as well, that he leaves the door open, you know, for the woo in a way.
Yeah.
But he still restricts himself to the scientific somehow. And so for me, it was like a process of like re-evaluating my whole, like all the practices and like what, and it's like I'm not sure if that's the word, or if it is a word, but it's like a psychologization of Christianity and of practices, you know, in his talks with Sam Harris, but even generally when he talks about prayer, for example, you know, it's like prayer becomes a thing of self-examination and much more than stepping into contact with a deity. Although maybe, you know, it's, and or like I was thinking about like worship, like what is worship to Peterson then? Like what are we doing? And then I was still like trying to like fit worship into a Petersonian framework. We say, okay, and then I'm also influenced by Pageau, and just a recent talk that he did where he said, you know, we worship what unites us, right? And we gather around what unites us, and that worship is like a collective, participatory celebration of the highest ideal, like something like that. And so I was to some degree, I think I'm able to somehow like to put it into a psychological framework. And the one point where I'm somehow unable to do it, and that was one question that I had for you as well, what to do with intercession. Like who, like I can even pinpoint it a bit, like who is intercession for?
Well,
does it change the intercessor, or does it change the one interceded for?
The classic modernist prayer question: does prayer change God, or does prayer change you? And you see, I see to me, I don't have and this of course won't come as any surprise to you, of course, I have zero hesitation relating to God personally. And I mean, of course, that's YWAM. I mean, that's what you learn in DTS. That's what the program is. Now the question then is, can that be translated into a Petersonian framework? And I think it's right there that his Jungian, I think it's right there that his Jungian credentials really show, because when I talk about the iron box of secularism, that is a few weeks ago I was talking about this quite a bit more in terms of the manifest image and the scientific image. Okay. The manifest image is life of agency, of relationships, of the stuff that we are deeply programmed. It is really the default way that we live in the world. Scientific image, strips out agency, strips out normativity, strips out all of those things, and tries to see the world through sort of a monarchical vision, where it's a world of objects, it's a world of cause and effect, and you try and continually dissolve and strip everything down just to these little sequences, causal relationships. No human being can work in that world, and we are not designed to work in that world. And when we do decide to work in that world, it's sort of like trying to play a first-person shooter computer game without a GPU. You're going to be doing all kinds of computations, but all of the high horsepower graphics computation that you need to move the picture along is just not going to be there. And so when we look at people imagining they're being scientific, that's why they can never really pull it off, because you can't live in the world that way. Now, in Vancouver 1, which I thought was the best of the 4 speeches, the interchange about intercessory prayer, I think, was instrumental to this, because both Peterson and, I think critically, Brett Weinstein said, I can imagine how prayer works, because Peterson easily, via, I think, a lot of his Jungian constructs, but even Brett Weinstein has enough of an understanding of what has become depth psychology to imagine that in some weird ways, even if it's only our perception, we change the world with practices like these. Because, and even Sam Harris in that moment would admit that something's talking back to you. Now, again, and I think you phrased it exactly right, it's sort of a psychologization of the interaction. And so at some deep level, you're only talking to yourself, or you're talking to yourself in such a way that we can take it a step down, that somehow in a deeply unconscious level, you will be communicating and even in a shallow way colonizing the people around you to create a context in which the truth that you are pursuing in intercession is somehow co-opting the people around you to participate in. When I talked to John Vervaeke in the Miracles Conversation, he mentioned this story, which I really have to look up, about this miracle horse, that people were amazed at this horse that could do math. And then they discovered that the horse could do math only when the horse's owner was there in the room. And let's assume for a moment that the horse's owner was innocent of communicating to the horse at a deep level. The owner didn't realize he was doing it. And of course, the horse doesn't have the same kind of thoughtful consciousness Congress that we have, where a horse could, in a sense, lie, because that lying requires a certain ability for us to stand outside ourselves, to be double-minded, and to the best of our knowledge, a horse doesn't have that capacity. But what we know of horses is that they are tremendously sensitive animals, even to things within a human being that the human being is not conscious of. And for that reason, there's all these horse therapies where, you know, people have to come to terms with themselves before they'll be able to get along with a very sensitive horse. And so we know that horses have an amazing capacity to read us at levels that are below the conscious line. And so in that sense, one could construct a purely psychological argument for intercessory prayer, that prayer doesn't just change us, but prayer even changes the people that we are around, whether those other people know it or not, at levels that none of us are conscious of. So I think just from a quote unquote scientific perspective, or at least a secularish perspective within the box, you could say that intercessory prayer has that kind of power potentially. But now where Sam Harris will protest will be that, again, this gets into some of the biases of the celebrity atheists, that in the language that I've been using lately, that there is a super thing in the sky, and that what the picture that we have of intercessory prayer is somehow a relational connection between us and a super thing, and that super thing that acts on our behalf in a way in the world. Now, again, I can see the way you can almost get there with a Petersonian framework or a Jungian framework, because we are always immersed and contributing to a level of person-to-person networking and interaction that is both beneath the conscious level and more deeply impactful in the human shaping of our world than we can know. And Peterson gets at this whenever he talks about sacrifice. So if you listen to, it's in 12 Rules for Life, it's in the Easter talk that he did in 2018. And I remember that because that was just after my conversation with him that he released that Easter talk. And in those 5, in the transcripts that he has on his website of them, Peterson, I think, rightly notes that when we participate in sacrifice, and even sacrifice says, you know, animals on ancient barbecue pits, when we participate in that, we create the future and change the world and create community. And I think this is really what's amazing about Jordan's project, which is just how far you can go with this psychologically. And that really disturbs, I think, the celebrity atheists, because the bulk of their argument is that all of this stuff is just bullshit. And what Peterson is showing is that, no, this stuff is working. Now, again, from a Christian point of view, Peterson's arguments, just because he is demonstrating psychological connections, they don't debunk Christianity as such, because Christians have always known that Christian religious and spiritual practices are good for us. There have been ample validations of that at many, many different levels. And Christians have built within their theological cosmology that the God of creation is the God of redemption, and this is a relational God. And maybe I'm going too long on this. Stop me if I am, because you basically...
No, it's good. It's good.
because you basically triggered exactly what I've been working on for a while now, and feel like I'm making progress lately, because basically what I'm wrestling with is the Cartesian dualism that has set into that Christianity, that frame that Christianity has sort of acclimated itself within. But there are some weaknesses of that dualism that I think the celebrity atheists exploited. And why I think we find the likes of Peterson and Vervaeke helpful with more of their, the nomenclature gets tricky because I rightfully get called on some of this stuff because I am not an academic. This is not my area of expertise, because this is much more philosophy than it is theology, at least within the conservative frameworks that I've been working. But the non-dual materialism tries to establish a unified system by which all of this can happen. And what the celebrity atheists do is sort of chop it off at the head and say, no, we're not going to allow any intercessory. We're not going to allow any of that. We're not going to allow a super thing. And so when Jordan Peterson comes along and sort of reinvigorates our imagination with respect to God number one, he begins to illuminate how our religious practice is coherent from below, and we don't know how far up. And part of the difficulty that we have in our culture is we're always sort of looking from the bottom up. Now, it's exactly at this moment of relationality, when the GPU comes online, that, and this is why, that all of the exaptation of all of the really powerful things in our minds really come online. And I think it's for that reason that atheism will never carry the field, because you basically have, for your atheists, very high CPU people who are really smart in certain kinds of left brain, systematized, rationalized thinking. They are doing extraordinary work on that. But the real powerhouse of our brain that we use to navigate a marriage and navigate a room full of people and navigate real politics, not purified politics as some egghead thinks the world should be, but actual interchange with real people in the manifest image, that requires this enormous GPU, intuitive, fuzzy thinking, right side of the brain that Gilchrist has pointed out and says, people have both of these lobes of the brain. And to the degree that the celebrity atheists keep trying to slice the brain in half and get rid of half of it, they will always lose. And this is why religion is going nowhere. And the left side with its systems will always finally lose, not just to the wooish people, because there's a degree of bullshit in those systems that the left side of the brain calls them on reliably, but they will always lose because everybody else is engaging their full mind and is bringing all of the machinery to bear to actually engaging the world from top to bottom. And that's why people talk to their cars when it won't start, and they cuss at their computers when they crash. We're not going to stop. And basically we've had almost 100 years of trying to shame it out of people by using all kinds of status, leveraging technology, leveraging the academy. We've had 100 years of trying to shaming out of people, and shame is a powerful thing, but the limitations of shame are, when you stop watching and policing, they are going to go back and do it again. And as a pastor, that's what I see, is that even even in a church with a fairly old, rigorous, theological, religious system, you never shame out of people the things that come naturally, which is why folk religions persist and are not going anywhere, and why any finally credible and fully rounded religion will use the GPU and the exaptation and the intercession and the personal relationship with God. It is always going to eat the lunch of the rationalists. So there's, I'm going to have to make that a clip, because for me, that was, I mean, you asked just the right question to sort of give me the opportunity to kind of lay all this stuff in a much more concise format than I usually do in my 2-hour videos. I hope it was what you were asking.
You know, coming back to one of the things you said, you also mentioned like Peterson building this bridge, you know, starting at the bottom and like moving his way upwards, like building a natural theology. And to me, it's like still an open question somehow, like how high can he build this thing, you know, like how high, how far will it take him, or like take us, or take me if I go up these stairs, you know? Or is there like, where is the point where you have to somehow like jump or like make a leap? Or so that's, and to me, intercession still is like at least only partially, I don't know, explained, or at least you know, I feel like you, like, don't you lose something though if you only look at it from a psychological perspective? And I'm wondering how much, probably how much that is. I don't know.
Well, that's my point about the CPU and the GPU. If you look at your wife from a purely psychological perspective, you're not going to stay married. It's no fun.
Yeah.
Because what you have done is you have reduced her to, you have taken the personhood out of her and you have reduced her to a process. And you want to be in love. You want to be in a real relationship with something that is not something that is more than anything that you can wield. And that's why it's kind of an interesting thing to see just how far can Jordan Peterson build his Tower of Babel. But the Tower of Babel always ends the same way, because if you actually could succeed in it, you would destroy yourself. And that's exactly the story that happens in the Tower of Babel. Is what undermines the Tower of Babel? Well, their languages are confused. Well, what does that mean? Well, so what, their languages are confused. Why couldn't they keep building? No, because they couldn't cooperate. Because not only did they just abandon the tower, they had to move away from each other because they suddenly became enemies with all of the other builders. And that's what happens. And in fact, you see that playing out in Jordan's project. The higher Jordan builds, well, you know, sort of at the base, you might have Catholics and Orthodox and Protestants and New Age-ish people and political conservatives. You might have a coalition there at the bottom, but the higher you get in your project, the more they're going to be peeling off. And the reason is because that project is all about wielding. I mean, implicit in the project of the Tower of Babel is us trying to Voltron ourselves up to be able to look God in the eye and pull him out of the heavens. And the story says, never going to get there. Your arms are too short to box with God. So, I mean, you're exactly right. And the minute you try to, the minute you try to reduce your wife to psychology, oh, you will have a rude awakening, because she will not like it. And she has ways of punishing you that just in the 4 years of marriage, you have not begun to contemplate, because they are painful and they are robust. And you have the same power with her. But what you want to do is be loved and to love. And because part of you knows deep down that's what you were made for.
Yes, I think that like that is also encapsulated in the later third of what you said before with like the new atheists' failure to like look beyond that, you know, to like to look beyond the material or scientific probably. And I mean, I did my bachelor's degree in philosophy as well, although it was my minor. So but nevertheless, I still spent some time with philosophy, and I really enjoyed it. Like especially in the beginning, I did a lot of like analytic philosophy, and it's like, to me somehow when like trying to define truth, or like trying to get at like certain aspects, or like even like moral philosophy, it always felt weird to me, because it felt like you are trying to it's like when you, maybe I can use it like Jonathan Haidt's rider and the elephant. You are just the rider, and you're like trying to explain how the elephant feels, or like trying to explain something about the elephant, but you're like doing it from the top down, and you're like not like, you're only using like a specific tool for a question that requires something much bigger, you know. So that is something that I wouldn't say that I got frustrated with it, but it's maybe more something like disillusioned, although I never thought that philosophy would be able to answer the deepest questions somehow, and especially like analytic philosophy. I just, you know, we're in a seminar, and we read a really short text, and it's just like, well, 1.5 pages, and it's like super close reading, and then we sit in the seminar, and we talk about the text, and the biggest part of the session is like trying to even figure out what the text actually just says. So it's like, it's not even about what is the argument, and what do we do with it, do we agree, do we disagree, and then discuss the argument. It's like talking about, no, but he meant this, and when we talked about he uses this word, and what does this word even mean, and you like you zoom in sometimes like so much that you don't, I don't know, see the bigger picture or contend with the arguments. But even like not using, I don't know, like your experience, or like what you feel where you participate in. That's, I mean, I'm so grateful to you and to Vervaeke, to Pageau, with all these ideas, and like with Vervaeke's the 4 Ps. It's just like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so thankful to just have it like served on a silver platter for free. It's crazy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, it's because we're all participating in the same thing.
Yeah.
As you said earlier, we're trying to figure out this world.
Yes.
That's what we're trying to do.
And what I'm trying to say is like with analytic philosophy, and especially analytic philosophy, you remain in the realm of the propositional, and you try to reach into the participatory and into the procedural, and it doesn't work. Like it just doesn't work. Yeah. And so yeah, I think that was just a point that I wanted to make, I guess.
Well, and I think that's connected to the other point that you were making about how high can Peterson build his tower. There are limits to, you know, again, this gets into the story of the Bible. What we are small, we are limited, and there are limits to what we will do. And again, the Tower of Babel story goes straight to that. We are going to build a tower to the heavens. Well, again, you have to think culturally what that meant in those cultures, because heaven is the control room of earth, and it's in Pageauian terms, it's humanity trying to basically take over the world. This is in Genesis 3. This is in Genesis 11. You find this is in the census, and Pageau, for me, just really opened my eyes to this and to how often this comes through. And it's even in the crucifixion, because Jesus is a man. And, he's a man with more power than any other human being who had ever lived. Yet on the cross, he cries Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's why has Christianity endured? And, there was somebody on Twitter, posted that, it was Sam Harris to Jordan Peterson to John Vervaeke and Paul Vanderklay and Jonathan Pageau, and now he's, exploring Christianity. I blame Sam Harris. You can't, even by fighting it, you engage it. And that was C.S. Lewis's point, that, an atheist can't be too careful in what he reads if he wants to maintain himself as an atheist, because okay, well, I want to dig. I want to see how high I can build this tower. Well, at some point in that rarefied air, you're going to realize the limits, and you're going to see that there's stuff above you. And you're going to have to say, how did that get up there? And in order to maintain your atheism, you're going to have to, okay, I have to answer how that got up there. And the more you pursue that project, if you do so with discipline and intelligence and perseverance and honesty, you're going to discover our limits. And there's still stuff up there. So then try to maintain the story that all that is built by us. And then we dig something up. It's like, how do I account for this? There's a reason atheists are a small portion of the population, and I think always will be. Now, maybe that looks differently in Europe, but because I know Europe is far more secular, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the numbers are, but I think at least in a lot of, also in the Nordic countries, I think there's a lot of atheists, or at least there's not many people who like still go to church. Yeah. And if you go, it's like maybe for Christmas, or it's Easter, maybe, but probably Christmas.
But I think part of the problem, I just finished. Have you been on the Discord server at all?
I haven't. I not really. I can talk about that as well in a second. But yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's, I was just talking to Topher from the Discord server right before you, and he didn't grow up in church, and I thought that conversation really went well, because we got to talking about why don't people go to church, and I think in the secular frame, in some ways, for many people, they just didn't see the point. We love to tell time on the frame of human lifetimes. I think any in-depth reading of human history suggests that's not really an apt clock speed for finding out truth for human beings, that it's probably 2, 3, 4 generations that you can really begin to see what human beings can live with or live without and actually be productive and flourish. So, it's just because for 100 years a family says, we don't go to church, we don't need any of that religion stuff. In the mythological view of Peterson, they continue to feed off the preserved carcass of their dead, ancestors. So
yeah, but I also think that it's quite complicated to talk about that, especially also with Tom Holland's Dominion, and just how permeated we are in a Christian framework. And you also talked about this, that like I'm not sure what the video title was, like the key difference between atheists and Christians is not belief in God.
No.
Something like that was the title. And so, because it, like, what are our tests, or like how do we conceptualize that Christian or not? And like you go to church and you don't, but it's like so in our culture as well, and in our ethical framework, in our worldview, it's so deep somehow that it's like hard to even find a true secularist, although they probably wouldn't let me saying that. But I'm quite persuaded by Holland's argument, and so so that complicates to me the matter of like speaking about Christian and non-Christian, because I think if you just look at the numbers also in Europe, at least compared to America, where you have a much higher, I think, population, or a much higher percentage of Christians, and it's much more like tied up with politics as well than it is in Europe. Nevertheless, it's not easy to then make, I don't know, claims if a country is Christian or not,
Yeah. How do you, and I bump into that all the time. So we use Christian as an adjective. What kind of an adjective is it? It's really hard, because when you listen to Sam Harris just excoriating Christians because the Bible doesn't seem to meet his ethical standards, but when you look at his ethical standards and they're just Christendom warmed over with a few libertine, a few anti-Puritan elements. I mean, that could be fundamentally what Sam Harris is an anti-Puritan, but he's a sort of a moderate Christian who has some weird ideas about getting rid of the Bible and hating the super thing and skepticism about intercession. So, but in terms of how he lives, and I've seen this again and again with a lot of these people. These are not Christian. Some Christian pastors have remarkably far more chaotic lives than some of these celebrity atheists. The celebrity atheists are dramatically faithful to their wives. It's like, where does that come from? At least to the best of our knowledge. Oh, I shouldn't be so. I shouldn't pick on those poor people like that. I don't know. I just see it, I think it, and I say it. Not enough of a filter. That's probably why I have a YouTube channel.
I think it also translates to just the like talking about even just like the term God as well. I mean, you talk about that a lot. Now I can't remember, is it fudgy or is it slushy? I don't know.
Fudgy is motivated. Sloshy is beyond us. So when you fudge an answer on your chemistry experiment, it's because, well, here's the answer and I've got to hit it, so I'm gonna fudge the math so I can get the right answer. That's fudgy. Sloshy it's like trying to grasp something, but it's liquid, and so you have it in a container, but it's spilling out, and so that's the difference between sloshy and fudgy. It just shows what physical creatures we are, because these, I don't exactly have words to say this stuff. There's probably some highfalutin word in a dictionary somewhere that says it better, but sludgy or fudgy and sloshy.
If it gets the point across, I mean, that's what words are for.
Yeah, and it's fun.
Yeah, but what I wanted to say is, just thinking about that and the term God, and also the various conceptualizations of God, and I think it was really helpful, even though some people may have found it, I don't know, infuriating that Peterson always like dodged the question, like, yeah, what do you mean by God, when he was asked. But I came across a quote by Eisenhower today, and he was the one in America who, I think under his administration, the "In God We Trust" was put on the $1 bill.
Yes.
And let me just find the quote, because he said, in other words, our form of government has no sense unless it is founded in a deeply felt religion or religious faith, and I don't care what it is. So
that's
and to me, that somehow really fit together with like, in God we trust, and you can think God this, you can think God that, and it's like just fudgy enough, because at least fudgy in the sense from Eisenhower that it's motivated then to unite, you know, it's like open to interpretation.
Yep.
Yeah.
David Brooks, you know who David Brooks is? He's a columnist for the New York Times. He's got a
book.
Heard
the name, but
he's got a book, The Road to Character. And there's a lot of little vignettes in that book. And one of them is on Eisenhower. Eisenhower's mother was a deeply religious woman, and Eisenhower was not. And I think Eisenhower is a terrific illustration of what we were talking about, that the span of one human being's life is insufficient to actually look for outcomes of worldviews. And so Eisenhower, in terms of his own life, sort of rejected the faith that his mother held, but those values that were in his mother that she put in him, those values played out in his life, even to the degree of, you know, one of the, you know, many presidents of the United States were not deeply religious people, but they were almost all deeply religious adjacent. And they manifested a certain religiosity in their lives. Now, I should say almost all. The you know, the book is still open on the Donald to see where we come down with him, but I'm glad I can laugh about Donald Trump, because I know so many people who can't, and that's a problem. So anyway, well, we're about out of time. Any final things you wanted to get in here but didn't get a chance to?
Probably it should have been said at the beginning, or at least for me, I wanted to communicate my motivation for actually doing this.
Yes.
This talk, because you know, I've been a listener and a viewer of your channel also for quite a few years, and I'm what you would call a lurker, so not really engaging in comments, or I don't think I ever commented under any one of your videos, although at least in the past few months listened to a lot of your content. And for me, and so part of this conversation for me, of course, I wanted to talk to you, and that's interesting to me, and like trying to make this thing that is always like distant and where I'm just a receiver, to make it more real and like to step in.
Yes.
And because I always have like some, I don't know, like a skepticism towards platforms and like online platforms, and I've hardly have ever seen like a productive YouTube comment section like, oh, you really changed my mind, or that's a really good point, or like something like that. It's like, if you see it, you have to point it out, and you have to like revel at this amazing thing that you just witnessed, because it just doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
again, with then a quick caveat, your comment section is probably something that also, I don't know, gave me hope, or at least at least I see quite a difference to other communities. And so essentially, I already thank you, but I just want to thank you again for like creating this space, and somehow, and also like doing these conversations, because for someone like me, it is very, I'm interested in authenticity and like truly dialoguing, and I don't really feel that I can get that in a YouTube comment section. And so having this conversation is almost for me like a, I don't know, like a starting point, or like a somehow like a stepping into participating. And yeah, so that's like also part of my motivation. And I just wanted to
well, thank you. I feel, a lot of people are grateful to me, and I appreciate that, because it has been work, and it has been in some intentionality on my part, but I'm also very indebted to you and people like you who have, because I couldn't make a comment section on my own, and it is you and people like you who have, supported this channel by subscribing, by watching. People have supported me on Patreon, supported my local church. And I would say, I mean, the Discord server is not everyone's cup of tea, but I would recommend going there and giving it a try, because there are more people out there like you, and you see them in my conversations. But it is, we're these electronic tools are not perfect by any means, and they skew and they distort, but there is capacity there. And especially for some people, I think people who have struggled to sort of find and build a community, or at least a semblance of a community. I'm really surprised how far we've gotten so far. I really am. I more expected things to sort of crash around us, but it hasn't yet. And there are stumbles sometimes, and people, sin is real, and people are people. So yeah. So no, I appreciate it. And this has been a wonderful conversation. Is this something that do you want to see it before I share it, or you want to give me permission to share it? What do you think?
I think you can share it if you want to.
Oh, I do. This was a wonderful conversation. And again, I'm a Calvinist, so I'm supposed to have a dour perspective on human nature, but it is surprising to me how I can just kind of put links out there and have people I don't know sign up, and how many wonderful people like yourself that I meet. It's fun on your side, but it's at least as much fun on my side. It really is. And the channel has been a labor of love, and probably one of the most stimulating and gratifying things I've ever done in my life. It's crazy, but yeah, who'd have thought you could do something like this on YouTube? But here we are, and maybe it won't last. I believe that the age of decay is a real thing, and everything that we build decays, and we corrupt. And I mean, that's part of what's built into the story of the Tower of Babel. But at least while we're enjoying the fruits of our labors, let's enjoy them. So thank you, Timm. And
thank you very much, Paul, for this conversation. I really enjoyed it.
What time is it where you're at right now?
Now it's probably some way around 9 p.m.
Okay, so not too crazy late. So, Well, thank your wife for sharing your time with me. Probably evenings are often spent with her, and no children yet?
No children yet.
Oh, no. You've got one of the, and I look at our culture and I think people don't know the riches they are passing by, because it is, it's sacrificial. I don't know if you saw my conversation with Poe that I did a couple days ago, but
only like the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. So children are a if I feel for those who haven't had the opportunity to participate in that, one of the most amazing aspects of being a human being. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for us, it's quite a big topic as well at the moment. And I think it's funny if it maybe was because of the conversation with Paul, because just at the beginning talking about anti-natalism as well. Like suddenly all my YouTube recommendations are like anti-natalists groups and like worldwide communities that like come together. And it was quite surprising that existed, like communities coming together for that philosophy, like worldview, organizing events, and I don't know.
They have to. They have nothing to do. They have no children. Once you have a child, you don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Tim. This has been a delight. Thanks for signing up.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.